You don't notice the slow unthreading of your own legacy until someone else starts stitching themselves into your place. That's what this has felt like. One unravel after another, so subtle, so quiet, like someone tugging at a thread they thought no one would miss. But I've always noticed, I've always paid attention. That's why this system even works. My name is Isabella Marine, and for nearly a decade, I've been the silent architect behind the financial backbone of Halden and Cross. I'm not on the website. I've never given a TED-style talk at a company offsite. But when the numbers needed reconciling at 3 a.m., or when the ERP backend buckled under an unexpected patch, I was the name whispered in the dark. Call Isabella. I never needed the spotlight. I needed the system to run. I needed to sleep at night knowing the math made sense, that bonuses were accurate, that payroll wouldn't destroy someone's rent schedule. I gave them my brain, my nights, my weekends, my flu season. And now, they've assigned me an intern. Mateo Jimenez, 23, fresh-pressed slacks, too much cologne, and a resume polished to a mirror shine. He shook my hand too tightly, like he was trying to prove something. I'm excited to learn everything you know, he said, with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. That was the first thread that twitched. I've trained interns before, bright-eyed graduates who were curious, uncertain, humble. Mateo wasn't like that. He wasn't curious, he was strategic. In his second week, he asked how I managed off-cycle journal entries. Not because he cared about accounting nuances, but because he wanted the process map, the blueprint. Like he was preparing for a test I didn't know I was giving. And then Emilio started watching me. My boss, my once ally, now suddenly had questions about everything. Are you still the only one with access to the revenue adjustment macros? Do you have a backup of the forecast logic for Q4? Maybe Mateo can take a look at your tagging system for internal expenses? At first, I told myself I was imagining things, but then the locks started changing. One morning, I tried logging into our dev environment. Denied. I'd called it a security upgrade. I'd used that same access level for 5 years. Gone. Next, I stopped receiving invites to the finance strategy syncs. I emailed Emilio. He replied 2 days later, vague as fog. Smaller working groups now, Isabella. More agile. More agile. That phrase again. It had been floating around since the board brought in a new consulting firm, a sleek batch of 20-somethings in matching Patagonia vests, who scribbled on whiteboards and talked about disruption like it was an energy drink. Agile, streamlined, cross-functional. All synonyms for you're in the way. I tried to push past the suspicion. I told myself this was just restructuring. I even convinced myself Mateo might just be a bright kid who genuinely wanted to learn. Then came the cafeteria. It was Tuesday. I'd just reheated my lunch, leftover lentils and rice, still steaming, and passed the break room when I heard them. Emilio and our CEO, Luis. Laughing. Casual. Speaking in Spanish, clearly assuming no one around would understand. Después de que ella entrene al chico, la despedimos. Fácil. After she trains the kid, we'll fire her. Easy. I stopped cold. I stood there, a Tupperware of lentils in one hand, the other trembling slightly against my thigh. They kept talking, unaware. Joking about whether they should give me a farewell party, about how I'd probably cry, about how Mateo was more adaptable. What they didn't know, what no one ever bothered to ask, was that I spent 4 years studying in Madrid. I speak better Castilian than they do. I heard every syllable. I didn't cry. I didn't storm in. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and stared at my monitor. My spreadsheet was still open, blinking patiently at cell D27. Budget variance. What do you do when the people who once trusted you now plan your erasure over microwave lunches? You watch, you listen, you begin to plan. That night, I stayed late. I wasn't supposed to. We want you taking more personal time, Emilio had said in our last check-in. But I needed silence. I needed the hum of the building after everyone left. I needed to pull out the old files, the backup routines, the anomaly reports, the forgotten scripts I'd written to patch their mistakes. I backed them all up. Not to sabotage. Not yet. but because I knew what was coming. They wanted me to train my replacement. But I had a different plan. They forgot who built this system from the ground up. They forgot who they were trying to erase. But soon, very soon, they'd remember. You know that feeling when you sense something slipping out from under you, but no one else in the room seems to notice? Like you're standing on ice that's just started to crack, but everyone around you is skating. That's what work has felt like lately. Each day, a new fracture. And I'm the only one who hears the creak. It started with something small, as these things always do. A document, my Q2 ledger audit file, opened, edited, and resaved under someone else's hands. I'd spent hours fine-tuning that sheet. Custom validation rules, tiered risk flags, linked dependencies that fed directly into our year-end reporting projections. It was my work, precision-layered, proprietary. And yet, when I opened it Monday morning, things were off. The color coding was changed. Formulas I'd locked were suddenly editable. Someone had added a new column labeled Adjustment Confidence Score, whatever that meant, and it wasn't formatted properly, which threw the conditional formatting into chaos. I scrolled down, frowning, and there it was. Mateo Jimenez, listed as the last editor. For a second, I just stared at the screen. I could feel heat rising under my collar, but I didn't storm over, I didn't shout. I took a breath, stood up, and walked to his desk like I was just passing by. He looked up from his laptop, all sunny charm and eager posture. "Morning, Isabella," he said brightly. "I made a couple updates to the ledger doc. Hope that's cool. Emilio thought it'd be a good opportunity for me to practice syncing manual adjustments into the trend forecast." I smiled. I don't know how I did, but I smiled. "That file feeds into our executive budget reports," I said gently. "Some of those fields have triggers attached. It's not just a spreadsheet." "Oh," he said, blinking. "Sorry, I didn't realize. I was just trying to help." I wanted to believe him, but something about the way his fingers kept twitching near the touchpad told me otherwise. He wasn't just poking around. He knew what he was doing. "Did Emilio give you access to the dashboard too?" I asked. "Yeah," said I could shadow your workflows more closely. I nodded once, then walked straight to Emilio's office. I didn't even knock. I just stood in the doorway until he looked up. "I need to talk to you about Mateo." He didn't bother with greetings, just leaned back in his chair and gestured vaguely. "Shoot! He's editing files he doesn't fully understand. He's in systems I haven't granted access to. When were you planning to tell me you promoted him to shadow-level admin?" Emilio sighed like I was being dramatic. "Isabella, relax. Mateo's just learning, and we need to modernize how we handle internal knowledge transfers. You've been the only one touching certain processes for years. That's a risk." "No," I said calmly. "What's risky is letting someone inexperienced inside real-time reports with no oversight. You do realize those dashboards feed into our QBR briefings?" "I trust he won't break anything," he said. "Besides, you'll catch it if he does." And there it was. I stood there for a beat longer, just watching him. His desk was littered with productivity books and a half-eaten protein bar. A sticky note on his monitor read, "Disrupt or be disrupted." "Let me be clear," I said evenly. "I will be reviewing every change, and I'll be backing up my versions of all major documentation." "Fine," he replied, glancing back at his screen. "Just don't make this personal, okay?" I almost laughed. Don't make it personal. As if watching a stranger slowly chip away at the foundation you built by hand isn't the most personal thing in the world. Back at my desk, I opened my email. The inbox was cluttered with requests I used to get funneled directly, except now, they were CCing Mateo. My calendar was being populated with transition syncs, not reviews, not strategy. Transition, as in, away from me. I tried to keep my composure. I've lived through acquisitions, restructures, rebrands. But this felt different. This wasn't a corporate pivot. This was a quiet replacement. Worse, no one seemed to question it. I'd overhear comments in the kitchen. Mateo's already streamlined 2 expense forms. He's automating the vendor payout logic next. Even Marcy from compliance, who once begged me to walk her through a discrepancy on Christmas Eve, now referred to me in the past tense. Isabella used to manage that report, but I think Mateo's taking over. Used to. Just like that, I'd been turned into a relic. Old school. The kind of employee people smile at politely while quietly moving your legacy into a folder labeled archive. They forgot who held the system together, but I didn't. That night, I stayed late. Again. The office emptied, lights dimmed, and I opened a shell terminal no one else remembered existed. I checked access logs, downloaded backups, documented every modification, every unauthorized permission. I encrypted it all. Not because I wanted revenge. Because one day, very soon, someone's going to realize something broke, and they're going to need the only person who knew where the failsafes were hidden. And I want to be ready when that day comes. You can tell a lot about a man by what he says when he thinks you don't understand him. I wasn't supposed to be at that lunch. It was a CEO-level affair, one of those curated bridge-building meetups designed to show investors we were cosmopolitan, transparent, and well-aligned. Mr. Takahashi, our Tokyo-based partner, and one of the largest backers of Halden and Cross's expansion into APAC, had flown in for a 2-day strategy alignment. Emilio needed someone to explain the financial scaffolding. No one on his team knew it well enough. And so, last minute, he pulled me in. I should have known what that meant. We met at Yuji, one of those minimalist restaurants tucked in the kind of Manhattan alley that doesn't exist on GPS. The kind where every surface gleams and the server's shoes make no sound. I wore navy, understated makeup, and my quietest heels. The three of us sat at a private table with muted overhead lighting, the kind you'd expect in a confessional. Mr. Takahashi greeted me with a slight bow, soft eyes. "Marine-san," he said warmly, "a pleasure." His English was excellent, but once we were seated, he comfortably slipped into Japanese. Emilio, trying to impress, followed suit. His vocabulary was sharp but soulless, the kind of fluency you get from language apps and overpriced tutors. Mechanical, meant for show. The conversation started safely enough. Logistics, timelines, vendor consolidation. I answered when prompted. Measured, respectful. I could tell Mr. Takahashi was listening carefully, not just to what I said, but how I said it. By the second course, Emilio was feeling bold. He said lightly, chopsticks suspended midair. "She's not very progressive, is she?" The words hit me harder than the wasabi ever could. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. Mr. Takahashi's expression didn't change. He simply nodded once, slowly, and replied, "Is that so?" Emilio chuckled. "She doesn't belong in the new direction. She won't be here next quarter." I felt something inside me split. Not break, just realign, shift, like a gear that suddenly stops pretending it still fits. I had lived in Kyoto for 2 years, taught English by day, studied economics by night, learned to speak Japanese from a woman who made me repeat verbs until I dreamt in hiragana. I spoke better than Emilio, understood nuance better, understood people better, and he had no idea. That's what enraged me the most. Not just what he said, but the casual way he said it. Like I was already gone, like I was an afterthought, background noise in a room where I was the reason the numbers added up. Mr. Takahashi looked at me for a fraction of a second. Not with pity, with curiosity. I smiled at him, just a little. Not at Emilio. I said nothing on the car ride back to the office. I didn't slam my keyboard. I didn't cry in the bathroom. I did something else. I made a decision. That night, long after the lights had gone out and the air conditioning shut off, I sat at my desk with a mug of cold green tea and opened my private drive. Not the company one. Mine. The one no one knew about. The one I started keeping after the first time they passed me over for a promotion and said it was just not the right time. I opened the backbone schematic of our financial systems. I started mapping dependencies. Who relied on which reports? which outputs were manual, which systems had undocumented overrides, shortcuts I built during the pandemic when everything had to move fast and nothing was working. Then I went further. I created a forked mirror of our accounting logic, only cleaner. No legacy code, no buried patches, just elegance, efficiency, accuracy. And then I embedded a tracker, silent, invisible, that recorded every time someone used one of my systems without acknowledging the source. Not because I was petty, because I was done being erased. I wasn't planning sabotage. That's not who I am. But I was done playing defense. For too long, I'd been trying to earn back my own seat at the table. That lunch proved it wasn't about the seat. It was about control. And they had underestimated the one person in this company who actually understood how it all fit together. They thought I didn't hear them. They thought I was too old school. They thought they had time. But what I had was leverage. And the first rule of finance? Control the ledger, control the story. I didn't leave my apartment that weekend. The city moved on outside my windows. Dog walkers, brunch crowds, couples bickering over which vintage shop to browse. But I barely registered any of it. I moved from my kitchen table to the couch to my desk in quiet, measured loops, living on reheated coffee and the kind of focus that only appears when something inside you refuses to look away anymore. I wasn't trying to find dirt. I was looking for leverage. But what I uncovered? It wasn't just a mess. It was a damn blueprint of deceit. It started with a thread. A single out-of-place transaction tucked into our vendor expense table. A retention bonus paid to a contractor named Alan P. Dermott, $12,000, marked urgent. No project ID. No linked deliverable. The entry was signed by Emilio. At first, I assumed it was just a misclassified payment. Maybe a vendor we hadn't onboarded properly. So I searched for Alan's vendor file. There wasn't one. No tax ID, no W-9, no address, nothing. Just a payment. Followed by two more, under slightly altered names. Al P. Dermott, APD. All routed to the same bank account. One that didn't match any registered vendor profile. My stomach went cold. I opened a private log sheet, time-stamped everything, and kept digging. By midnight Friday, I'd uncovered $38,000 in fake contractor payments over 6 months, all processed through project codes marked Deferred Operations Support. No oversight, no second approver. All authorized solely by Emilio Sanchez. But it didn't stop there. There were consultation fees. A $9,500 invoice paid to Quinte Advisory Group for executive coaching. Sounded legitimate, until I checked their incorporation status. They were dissolved in 2017. The invoice was dated 2023. I paused, took a breath, pushed further. Over a dozen monthly maintenance retainers were being paid to contractors I knew for a fact hadn't logged into our system in over a year. One of them, Greg L., had moved to Australia and joined a solar tech firm 6 months ago. I messaged him just to confirm. He responded, "I haven't touched Halden and Cross code since last spring." Why? I didn't reply. I was already 5 steps ahead. I pulled server access logs, found no activity from those accounts. They were placeholders. Shell vendors used to bleed money out of the company in slow, calculated drips. All signed again by Emilio. Some with notes like, "Approved offline," or "Client required continuation." There were no clients. I checked reimbursement claims next. Mateo's expense report caught my eye, submitted in his 3rd week. He had claimed a $200 strategic dinner with a vendor. He wrote it off as a mentorship dinner with me. I never had dinner with him. I flagged the document. Then I built out a timeline, correlating each forged transaction with internal announcements, bonus cycles, funding updates, departmental cuts. The fraud wasn't random, it was orchestrated, hidden behind good news. And I knew exactly why I'd been pushed aside. I was the one person in that company with enough visibility to see through the sleight of hand. The real reason Emilio wanted me out wasn't that I was outdated. It was that I was a threat to the fantasy he'd built. I worked straight through Saturday. No breaks, no music, just silence and numbers. By Sunday afternoon, I had assembled everything into a master folder. Then I got petty, not messy, petty. I built a deck, 43 slides of clean, devastating evidence. I called it The Greatest Hits of Emilio Sanchez, a curated financial retrospective. I didn't editorialize. I didn't add jokes or commentary. I let the numbers do the storytelling. Slide 1. A forged contractor timeline. Slide 2. The invoice from a dead firm. Slide 3. Screenshot of a mentorship dinner that never happened. Slide 4. Payments to ghost accounts. Slide 5. Mateo's bonuses, 3 of them, compared against policy. And then, halfway through, Slide 23. An annotated company org chart. Red lines showed where the corruption passed unchecked. Green lines showed where oversight had been quietly removed. And a single yellow line pointed back to me, where all the real accountability used to live. The final slide? A single sentence. Presented for internal clarity and fiscal health. Shall I forward this to Mr. Takahashi, or would you prefer to? Sunday evening, I backed it all up, twice. One cloud, one USB, hidden in a lipstick case under my bathroom sink. I encrypted everything with a passphrase no one could guess, unless they knew my mother's birthday, and the nickname only she ever used. And then I sat still. The lights outside my apartment glowed soft against the night. I heard the faint honk of a taxi below. The world hadn't changed. Not yet. But come Monday morning, it would. Because I was no longer defending my place. I was preparing to take the floor back entirely. It was 5:11 a.m. when I woke up on Monday. No alarm. My body had simply decided sleep was a luxury I could no longer afford. The city outside my window was still smeared in pre-dawn gray, but my mind was alert, sharp, already scripting my next move before I'd even stepped out of bed. I dressed with deliberate care. Neutral tones. No jewelry except the tiny silver watch my grandmother gave me when I graduated. Understated, professional, forgettable. Exactly the way I wanted to appear. At 6:03 a.m., I was the first person in the office. The front desk lights hadn't even come on yet, and the elevator made a low, uncertain groan as it brought me to the 19th floor. The hum of silence wrapped around me like armor. This early, no one asked questions. No one watched. I booted up my system, not my work terminal, my personal laptop, sleek, unbranded, connected to a shadowed network Emilio and his glorified intern could never trace. No cookies, no trackers, just clean encryption and intent. And that's when I typed the name, Misaki Shiragani, Mr. Takahashi's personal assistant. But that title didn't capture what she truly was. She was his eyes, his ears, and occasionally his scalpel. I'd met her only once, years ago, during a tense investor summit in Osaka. Most executives saw her as a glorified scheduler, but I watched how Mr. Takahashi deferred to her before answering any difficult question. She was discreet, frighteningly organized, and unshakably calm. She'd handed me a tissue discreetly under the table when an executive from our side went on a barely coded rant about cultural overaccommodation. She had said one word, barely a whisper, "Hold steady." I remembered that. I still had her direct contact. I didn't use it then. But now, I needed her. I opened an encrypted communication client I hadn't used since my consulting days in Japan, back when I audited systems for NGOs and startup accelerators across Kyoto and Sapporo. It still worked. I sent a message in formal Japanese. "It's been a while. Apologies for the intrusion, but I'm reaching out regarding a highly sensitive matter. Can you respond via alternate secure channel?" I expected a delay, maybe even silence. Instead, her reply came in 3 minutes. "Understood. You will receive a private connection in 5 minutes." And she did. It was a masked VoIP line routed through Tokyo, scrubbed clean, exactly like the ones we used in regulatory risk meetings with high-stakes disclosures. I answered. "Shirogane-san," I said quietly. "Isabella-san," she replied. What's the nature of the risk? Her voice was as measured as I remembered. Not surprised, just prepared. Internal fraud, executive level, misappropriated funds, fabricated contractor payments, falsified expense reports. It's being orchestrated by Emilio Sanchez. He's hiding the rot behind transition plans and digital modernization. He's planning to eliminate my position by Q3. Silence. Then a single question. Do you have proof? Yes, I said. Source files, metadata, voice logs, vendor traces, PDF scan timestamps, even bonus allocations altered manually outside policy timelines. Format? PDF package, verified spreadsheets, 2 audio captures, Japanese summary and glossary of technical terms included. There was a pause. Then, are you prepared to send? Yes, but only directly to your office. No intermediaries, no system admins. I want this in your hands and Mr. Takahashi's, no one else. Another pause. Then her voice dropped slightly, the way it does when someone is no longer following protocol, but moving into protection mode. Use the Osaka sub-channel. Username, Sumikiri. Same credential set we used in the 2021 upload. File name must appear benign. Keep metadata scrubbed. I had already prepared for this. I zipped the master folder, everything from the forged consulting invoice to the contractor IDs that didn't exist in any real registry. I even included a deep dive into how Emilio had constructed a ghost budget stream using suspended accounts from a system we retired in 2020. The file was named Q3 Audit, Touchpoints, Draft, Boring. Bland, safe. I uploaded it to the secure folder, locked it with a 256-bit encryption key derived from an obscure Buddhist proverb Masaki and I had once joked about during a long wait outside a Kyoto train station. 10 minutes later, the upload was confirmed. And at 7:14 a.m., a courier envelope appeared on my desk. Cream-colored, heavy paper, no markings. Inside, a single card, received. The next move is ours. No signature, no logo. I slid it into my folio and closed the drawer slowly. By the time the office filled, I was back in place. Quiet, calm, smiling faintly at Mateo's fumbling attempts to explain streamlined reconciliation to an audience that didn't even know what column integrity was. Emilio walked past me once, laughing with someone on his phone. He glanced my way and gave a nod, casual, confident. Like a man unaware the ceiling above him had already begun to crack. I nodded back, because the trap was set. The evidence was in Tokyo, and the woman who controlled the flow of power in the Takahashi circle? She didn't let things slide, not ever. Tuesday started like any other, until it didn't. I arrived at my desk just after 8 a.m., coffee in one hand, a tight to-do list in the other. I was ready to focus, to finalize the vendor compliance module updates for Arcadia, and run one last integrity sweep before month-end close. That's when I saw it. A pale yellow sticky note, perched like a smirking stranger on my monitor. Serena now point for Arcadia. Please include her in all updates. E. That was it. No email, no meeting, no context. Just a flimsy square of paper that landed with the weight of a wrecking ball. Serena, an intern, assigned to my project. Without warning, without consent. Arcadia wasn't just a program. It was my work, my framework, my intellectual blueprint. I'd conceived it late one night over cheap Chinese takeout and a spreadsheet of vendor payment errors. I'd architected it to streamline operations, tighten compliance, and fix the financial chaos no one else even noticed. I built it through 2 CFOs and 4 reorganizations. Now, hand it off. Just like that. I didn't react outwardly. I simply sat down, placed my coffee beside the monitor, and opened Outlook. And there it was. A thread I hadn't been copied on, forwarded by mistake from someone in legal who must have meant to send it to Isabella V. in product design. Subject: Arcadia wins. Talking points for Q2 executive briefing. From Emilio Sanchez. To boardops halcross.internal. CC. CEO. Assista halcross.internal. I clicked, scanned, and my stomach twisted. Emilio had written a full-page summary of Arcadia's milestones, padded with buzzwords and performance claims. But it wasn't just corporate fluff. It was theft. Line after line described the system I had spent 3 years designing as his idea. Since initiating Arcadia's foundational modeling last year, I've overseen its full integration into vendor operations. Our intern team, now led by Serena Patel, is driving the final phase of migration with strong mentorship and oversight. My name was nowhere, not once. And attached to the thread? 2 PDFs. The first claimed to be a status update from me, dated last week. The second was a milestone recap, with my name and signature. Except, I hadn't written either, and I certainly hadn't signed them. I opened the files slowly, my skin crawling with dread. The layout was correct. The formatting mimicked my templates, but the phrasing wasn't mine. Too vague, too hollow. It read like someone skimming headlines of work they didn't understand. Then I saw the signature. My name, forged. The digital signature ID wasn't mine. The timestamp metadata listed the device as ESX1SU17, Emilio's work laptop. He had manually entered my name, exported it as a flattened PDF, and passed it off as my endorsement. And no one had questioned it. Not legal, not the interns, not the board. I stared at the screen, pulse steady, breath shallow. This wasn't just appropriation. This was falsification, forgery, fraud, and it was personal. I moved methodically, saved the files, opened the original drafts from my secured archive, compared line by line, highlighted every discrepancy. Then I ran a metadata extraction and pulled the edit trail. Next, I opened my encrypted archive. Taka, handoff. Alpha. Inside, every forged document, my originals, the altered signatures, screenshots, comparison tables, timestamped logs. I added a cover page with a simple title, Attribution Theft and Signature Forgery, Arcadia Discrepancy Report, Confidential. Then I opened my secure line to Misaki Shirogane in Tokyo. We didn't waste time on greetings. She answered with a quiet, "Hi. I've uncovered document forgery," I said. 2 reports submitted to board ops bearing my forged signature. The content has been lifted from my original Arcadia documentation. It was submitted by Emilio Sanchez as his own work. An intern, Serena Patel, is now listed as project lead. Misaki didn't respond right away. Then she asked, "Do you have corroborating metadata?" I smiled faintly. "I have everything." "Send the full packet," she said. "I'll present it to the CEO, direct channel." I uploaded the file. As it transferred, I added one more note to the body. This is no longer internal politics. This is systemic fraud, escalating. The confirmation pinged back 6 minutes later. "Confirmed. You may rest assured." I closed the message, leaned back in my chair. Just then, Serena breezed into the room, clutching a notebook and the awkward, try-hard confidence of someone who didn't know they were a pawn in someone else's chess game. She stopped at my desk and smiled too brightly. "Hi, I'm Serena. Emilio said I'd be supporting Arcadia now, kind of shadowing you, but also maybe helping lead." I looked at her, calm and unreadable. "Of course," I said smoothly. "You'll find the project is layered. I'd be happy to show you where the deeper threads lie, if you're willing to learn where not to tug." She blinked. "Sorry?" I smiled again. "Nothing. Welcome aboard." Because now it didn't matter. The CEO was watching. Tokyo had the files, and I had learned the most important rule of war in the corporate world. The quietest weapon leaves the deepest wound. By midweek, I had stopped checking my inbox like a normal person. Every incoming ping now felt like a warning shot, each calendar update another inch closer to the inevitable breach. The meeting invite arrived late Wednesday evening, sent under the guise of a routine, strategic realignment session. The subject line was deceptively sterile. Mandatory, operations and finance consolidation, Thursday, 9 a.m. Executive Conference A. No agenda, no description, just a note in the body. Full attendance required. Departmental leads will provide insights on optimization planning. It didn't take much decoding. This was it. The moment Emilio had been orchestrating for weeks, maybe months. A public, politically dressed spectacle designed to justify gutting staff under the shiny label of cost-saving. And at the heart of it? Me. He was going to stand at the front of that boardroom and slice through my career with a clicker and a smile. But while Emilio was finalizing his pitch deck, I was building something else. My doomsday folder. It wasn't a metaphor anymore. It was a real thing. A collection of documents, screenshots, access logs, falsified files, and side-by-side comparisons, all curated, time-stamped, cross-referenced, and watermarked with digital proof. Every forged document, every shadow contractor payment, every unauthorized signature attempt, cataloged like evidence in a trial I wasn't planning to attend. I wasn't just protecting myself. I was preparing for collapse. The folder lived in 3 forms. One was stored in a cloud archive disguised as a dormant translation project under the name Kyoto Poetry Rewrite.doc. 2 was an encrypted USB drive taped inside a hollowed-out textbook in my apartment labeled Corporate Ethics 2nd ed. 3 was the most delicate, a timed auto-release message set up through an anonymous account. If I didn't log into a particular VPN and reset the trigger every 72 hours, the contents would be emailed to every board member, 2 investigative reporters I trusted, and the Financial Times whistleblower desk. Just in case. And then came Thursday. The building buzzed differently that morning. Everyone felt it, even if they didn't say it out loud. There was a subtle tension, like the air just before a thunderstorm. Too quiet, too still. People were trying to act normal, but their glances were longer, tighter. Mateo looked unusually dressed up. Serena clutched a leather-bound notebook, like it was a security blanket. I arrived at my desk early, as always. I wore navy again. A quiet, composed armor. Pulled my hair into a tight bun. No jewelry, no perfume, not even lipstick. I wasn't going in as a victim. I was going in as a witness. At 8:12 a.m., my phone buzzed with a secure message. Misaki. 1 word. Again. Delivered. The CEO of Halden & Cross now had the entire digital archive in his hands. Not just the highlights, everything. The fraud, the forged contracts, the ghost bonuses, the metadata linking every action to Emilio's machine, even Mateo's clumsy edits done under spoofed admin access. It was all in there, translated and organized in a report that had taken me 2 sleepless weekends to compile. And more importantly, my final note to Tokyo had made the point clear. If I am removed in today's meeting, it will be as the whistleblower you ignored. They wouldn't ignore it. They couldn't. At 8:39 a.m., Emilio strutted out of his office with a confidence that made my skin crawl. He was carrying a presentation folder, glossy printouts, the same ones I'd formatted for him years ago. He smiled like a man walking into a celebration. I watched him pass by, head high, back straight. Arrogance is such a delicate thing, so beautiful in its rise, so satisfying in its fall. At 8:55 a.m., I picked up my tote bag, slid a manila envelope inside, labeled only Arcadia, Original Author Attribution plus Evidence Index, and walked to Executive Conference A. I walked slowly. Not because I was afraid, because I already knew how it would end. Emilio had planned to bury me under numbers. He didn't realize I was the numbers. And Tokyo? Tokyo was already sharpening the blade. The conference room was too cold, a calculated chill that made people sit straighter, speak faster, and remember just how small they were in the grand machine of Halden & Cross. The walls were glass, but the blinds were drawn halfway, slicing the morning sun into sterile gray slats that fell across the room like prison bars. The table was spotless, not a pen out of place, bottled water untouched. At precisely 9 a.m., Emilio walked in like he was arriving to accept an award. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than my rent and carried a leather folder so glossy it looked almost wet. Behind him trailed Mateo, sheepish and Serena, still pretending this wasn't all above her pay grade. I was already seated, middle row, hands folded, expression neutral. Emilio cleared his throat and fired up the projector. "Good morning, everyone," he began, all teeth and polish. "Thank you for joining me today. As you know, we're entering a new phase of strategic alignment, one that emphasizes agility, efficiency, and, most importantly, cost consciousness." He clicked to the next slide. Slide 1. Redundant roles versus strategic growth. He was so sure of himself. He talked about legacy staff overhead and technological consolidation. He outlined overlapping responsibilities and unnecessary redundancies. No names yet, but the language was surgical. He was setting the stage for a corporate execution. At 9:06 a.m., I noticed a change. The air shifted. Something subtle, electric. And then, the glass door opened. Mr. Takahashi stepped inside, the CEO of Halden & Cross. Every chair stiffened. Every breath in the room slowed. He didn't say a word. He simply walked to the head of the table and sat down, hands folded on the table in front of him. Emilio faltered. "Oh," he said, blinking. "I wasn't aware you'd be joining us, Mr. Takahashi. Of course, the more visibility the better, right?" The CEO didn't reply, just nodded. "Continue." So Emilio did. But the wind had shifted. He clicked through performance charts, showcasing metrics he didn't understand, built on frameworks I had designed. He said phrases like resource optimization and personnel recalibration, like he was reading from a TED Talk script. And then he clicked to the final slide. Slide 7. Revised staffing model, Q3 forecast. A single bullet point, legacy systems oversight, role consolidation pending. He said it so smoothly, like a dentist talking about a routine extraction. "That role," Emilio said, voice almost casual, "is being transitioned into a hybrid coordination model under the guidance of our newer digital operations team. We anticipate a net efficiency increase of over 22%. "Pause," Mr. Takahashi said. Emilio blinked. "Sir?" "Let's take a moment," the CEO said evenly, "before we finalize anything." He reached into his briefcase and removed a thin folder, cream-colored, no labels. He passed it to the woman seated beside him. "General Counsel." "Review this," he said quietly. She flipped it open. Her face didn't move, but her hands stopped after the third page. "These documents," she murmured, "they bear digital signatures that don't match archival records." Emilio paled. "That must be an error," he said too quickly. "There's been some confusion. Documents were being passed back and forth." "Several forged contractor records," the general counsel continued, scanning page after page. "Payments to entities with no legal registration, invoices from companies dissolved 5 years ago. More pages, more silence. And these were approved under your credentials," she said, not asking. Emilio straightened. "It's possible I was compromised. It's not unheard of. Someone else could have accessed my system. I'd like to have IT review the logs before any conclusions are drawn." "Don't worry," Mr. Takahashi said. "They already have." He turned toward me. "Isabella, you prepared this archive?" "Yes," I replied. My voice was calm, clear. "I prepared it and submitted the source files. All evidence was verified independently by your assistant, Misaki Shirogane." A beat passed. Then the door opened again, and Misaki walked in. Elegant, quiet, deadly. She held another folder in her gloved hands, stepped forward, and placed it in front of the general counsel. "This is the certified audit report," she said, "compiled with all corroborating metadata. The whistleblower protocol was enacted 72 hours ago." You could feel the room lean back. Emilio stood frozen. His smile was gone. "She fabricated all of this," he said suddenly, Wild now. She's been trying to sabotage me. This is personal. It's not even about the project. Mr. Takahashi cut him off. Enough. The word wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The room went still. The kind of stillness you only hear in courtrooms and after explosions. Mr. Takahashi turned to HR. Effective immediately, Emilio Sanchez is suspended. Legal will conduct a full internal investigation. No access to company systems. Escort him to his office. Emilio didn't move. Security did. Two quiet men from the hallway stepped in, not rushed, not aggressive, just precise. He looked at me. Not angry, not pleading, defeated. For the first time he understood. He wasn't untouchable. The woman he'd tried to erase? She was the reason he still had a chair to sit in, for a few more seconds anyway. As the door closed behind him, Mr. Takahashi turned to me. You'll oversee Arcadia going forward, full autonomy. You'll report to me directly. And that was it. Not a cheer, not applause, just quiet. And the sound of justice, slow and precise, settling into the bones of the room like gravity. The air in the room had thickened, like the aftermath of a thunderclap, still charged, still humming, but somehow hushed, reverent. No one moved, no one dared to. The presentation screen was frozen mid-slide, still displaying a bold title that now felt grotesque in its arrogance. Q2 Optimization Strategy, Streamlining the Future. Emilio stood in front of it like a broken sculpture, still and hollow, as if he could sense his name, once wielded like a sword, now cracking like old glass. His hands hung awkwardly at his sides. The leather folder he had clutched so confidently now looked like dead weight. I think there's context here that's being misunderstood, he said finally, his voice far too soft for a man who had walked in wanting to reshape the company. His words dropped like stones in water, barely making a ripple. The approvals, he continued, looking at no one. The vendor entries. They were part of an old system sweep. I inherited that data. I wasn't trying to hide anything. I just trusted the process. He looked up, seeking someone, anyone, for a nod, a flicker of solidarity. But the room was stone. Mateo avoided his gaze entirely, his posture folding inward like a child trying not to be seen. Serena sat stiff, breathing shallowly, as though she feared even blinking might imply guilt. And then there was me. I didn't look away. I didn't flinch. He glanced at me, and in that look was everything: confusion, fear, betrayal, regret. But mostly, the painful recognition that I was no longer the obstacle to his power. I was the reason it was over. Mr. Takahashi remained seated, hands folded calmly on the table in front of him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. There is no misunderstanding, he said. You forged signatures. You submitted documents containing fraudulent financial data to board-level operations. You authorized payments to non-existent contractors. And when questioned, your first instinct was not to investigate, but to redirect blame. Emilio tried to interrupt. With respect, some of those documents. You used Ms. Marine's name, the general counsel said sharply, on at least 5 separate files, all of which contain manipulated data. She provided original versions. You submitted altered ones. But I didn't. You did, said Mr. Takahashi firmly now. And Tokyo has confirmed every detail. He reached into his briefcase and slid another document onto the table. The audit trail shows metadata links to your device ID. Timestamps match your access hours. The pattern is unmistakable. This isn't negligence, Mr. Sanchez. Then came the worst part. The silence. Not the dramatic kind. Not the awkward kind. The final kind. The kind that settles like dust after something shatters. The kind that says, this is no longer up for debate. I've given everything to this company, Emilio said suddenly. His voice cracked. Nights, weekends. I ran operations when no one else would. I stepped in when budgets collapsed. And you used that access to rewrite history in your favor. Takahashi replied, unmoved. There's a difference between service and sabotage. Emilio's shoulders slumped. He looked tired now, smaller. A man slowly understanding that the empire he tried to build was made of sand, and the tide had come. Misaki stood near the door, still, poised. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her presence was a closing statement. Takahashi nodded once to legal. Effective immediately, Mr. Sanchez is suspended pending full investigation. Security will escort you. Do not access any company systems. Your badge will be deactivated as soon as you leave the floor. No raised voices, no tantrums, just procedure. Two men, plainclothes, polite, stepped quietly into the room from the hallway. They didn't move toward Emilio. They simply waited. He didn't resist. He didn't argue. He just stood there. For one long, aching moment. He turned toward me again, eyes hollow. And for the first time, I saw no calculation in them. No spin. No story forming. Just a man who finally realized his time was up, and that no one was coming to save him. He opened his mouth, then closed it, and left. No goodbyes. No door slammed. Just a soft click of hinges, and the hush that follows when power walks out of a room for the last time. No one moved for a full 30 seconds. Then Mr. Takahashi stood. He adjusted his cuffs, then looked directly at me. Ms. Marine, he said, you will resume oversight of Arcadia. Effective immediately, your title will be elevated to Director of Systems Integrity. You'll report directly to my office. I nodded quietly. Understood. He nodded once, then left without another word, followed by Misaki and Legal. The others filtered out slowly, quietly, avoiding my gaze, or perhaps hoping for an ounce of forgiveness that I wasn't ready to give. I remained seated. The projector screen still glowed in the dim light, a ghost of Emilio's final act. I walked over, pulled the HDMI cord, and watched the screen fade to black. Not with a crash, not with a scandal, just gone. Just like him. His era, his illusion, his reign. Finished. The official announcement came just before 3 p.m., marked with the company's blue and silver crest, and sent from the highest level of the organization. There were no leaks this time, no whispered rumors, no conveniently timed previews, just clarity. Subject: Leadership Realignment, Financial Systems, Integrity. From Office of the CEO, Takahashi Group Holdings, 2, all Halden and Cross staff. Effective immediately, Isabella Marine is appointed Director of Financial Systems Integrity for Halden and Cross Global. Ms. Marine will report directly to the Tokyo Executive Office. She will assume oversight of all operational, compliance, and transformation initiatives related to legacy system migration and financial architecture reform. This strategic realignment reflects our commitment to transparency, accountability, and long-term resilience. We thank Ms. Marine for her exceptional integrity and service to this company, and look forward to the next phase of growth under her leadership. The message wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. What it said, what it confirmed, was enough. No euphemisms, no backdoor titles, no interim or provisional. My name, my title, my domain. For a while, no one came to my desk. It was as though I had become part of some untouchable story everyone wanted to read, but no one dared to approach. When people passed by, their eyes flicked toward me and away just as quickly, as if they weren't quite sure what expression was appropriate. Sympathy? Admiration? Apology? I didn't offer them anything back. I didn't need to. Because for once, I had nothing to prove. Not anymore. Serena walked past with a tight, uncertain smile. Matteo lingered longer than necessary near the printer, but never said a word. Even HR, who'd once parroted Emilio's passive-aggressive language about generational mismatch, now avoided eye contact entirely. By 4 p.m., my inbox was filling with polite notes of congratulations from executives who'd once questioned my adaptability. people who once scheduled meetings without me for projects I'd designed. Now they were thrilled to work with me in this exciting new chapter. I responded to none of them, because my win didn't belong in their inboxes. It belonged in the quiet. In every after-hours audit I had run alone. In every lunch I had skipped to fix bugs no one saw. In every name they had left off the memo, until today. I packed slowly. No rush, just methodical. I placed my folio into my bag, slid my notebook, worn, filled with handwritten notes and sketches of systems I'd built from nothing, into the side pocket. Then I took one last glance around my desk, the same desk where I'd once fought to be heard, and I left it as I found it. Clean, precise, undeniable. No one followed me to the elevator. There were no flashbulbs, no applause, just the usual hum of office life shifting into end-of-day mode, phones ringing, printers sighing, voices hushed, and me, walking through it like a ghost made real. I didn't take the private executive elevator. I took the same one I always had. Floor 19 to lobby. 48 seconds. Long enough to breathe, to feel the weight of what I had survived settle into my bones. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was return. Return to myself, to my worth, to my work. They had tried to erase me, quietly, elegantly, discreetly, and I had answered not with vengeance, not with noise, but with truth, with evidence, with integrity so rooted that no storm could rip it out. I stepped out of the elevator and walked through the lobby, quiet, calm, invisible to most. I was not a warrior. I was not a martyr. I was not a revolution screaming for fire. I was a mountain, and mountains do not yell, they endure. They shape the sky, shift the wind, and change the map. Slowly, quietly, irrevocably. That is what I had become. And as the glass door slid open in front of me, and the city swallowed me into its pulse, I knew. This story wasn't about Emilio. It wasn't about fraud, or titles, or revenge. It was about the strength of a woman who did not break, and who will never be underestimated again. Success didn't roar into my life. It unfolded, one steady page at a time. After the dust settled at Halden and Cross, I spent 3 months restructuring the entire Arcadia system. With Tokyo's full backing, I implemented internal audit tools I had dreamed about for years. Real-time compliance flags, vendor verification pipelines, auto-blocking mechanisms tied to ethics scoring. They didn't just ask me to run the department. They asked me to reinvent it. And I did. Misaki became my primary contact in Tokyo, and over time, our messages shifted from strict protocol to genuine partnership. We spoke every week, sometimes late into her night or early into mine. She never wasted words. But when she said, "I trust your judgment," I felt it like a gold medal. Eventually, the CEO himself requested that I fly to Japan to present at the Global Systems Forum. I did, in perfect Japanese. No translator needed. I stood on a Tokyo stage where no one had ever heard of Emilio, and I explained a system I had authored alone. And when I finished, they didn't clap politely. They stood. After that, everything changed. The Tokyo office extended an offer, a rotational position across Asia-Pacific, to help design the financial infrastructures of the future. I accepted. For the first time in years, I wasn't cleaning up someone else's mess. I was building something new, something pure, with people who saw me, not as legacy talent, but as the architect. I relocated to Kyoto for a year. I lived near the Philosopher's Path and drank jasmine tea on quiet mornings while reviewing high-stakes procurement models. My weekends were filled with temple walks, language immersion classes, and a sense of peace I never thought I'd earn. One autumn afternoon, after finalizing a regional compliance hub for our Seoul office, I sat on a hill overlooking Kiyomizu-dera Temple. And I realized I was happy. Not the loud Instagram kind of happy, the deep, steady kind. I hadn't won by fighting dirty. I had won by staying true, by never letting the world convince me I had to scream to be heard. by knowing that silence is not weakness when it's filled with purpose. I wasn't a symbol. I wasn't a cautionary tale. I was just Isabella Marine, a woman who changed the rules of the game, quietly, permanently,